In this lecture, I will provide an introduction to training as a system, process, and functional area in an organization. Now, to begin, I'll talk about how organizations invest in training. In trainingindustry.com found in 2017, for example, that global expenditures on training are estimated at about $362 billion. Further, during 2017, US companies spent approximately $90.6 billion on training, and that comes out to be about $1,075 per trainee or learner. Now, on average, large US companies had a training budget of $17 million that year in 2017. And so these estimates signal the importance and the value that many organizations place on training and development, both within the United States and globally. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the need for training in organizations. Now, 2017 estimates found that approximately 67% of employers were concerned about a skills gap among their workers. So this highlights the need that there's something that needs to help close that gap. And one of the ways we can close a skills gap is to use the human resource management process of training. Now, that same resource and source found that 57% of workers wanted to learn a new skill. So not only do organizations or could organizations use training to help close that aforementioned skills gap, well, also more than half of workers want to learn new skills, and training can provide that experience for them and help them build those new skills. So what is training? Well, let's provide a formal definition for training. So training can be described as a planned effort to facilitate the learning of job-related KSAOs, competencies, and/or behaviors, where KSAOs refer to knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. Now, previous research has found that training can influence criteria or outcomes like task performance on the job, customer satisfaction, the retention and turnover of people within their jobs and within the organization, job attitudes like job satisfaction and turnover intentions, as well as help prevent injuries and accidents when we think about safety training specifically. So when we think about training and how we develop a training program, how we implement that training program, and how we evaluate it, it's often helpful to think about it in the following steps and as part of a process. So the first step or phase in the training process is to assess training needs. And this is where your needs assessment comes in. The next phase is to address characteristics of the trainee, the organization, and the training itself with the goal of enhancing learning. So how do we enhance learning or optimize learning within the training program itself? And to do so, we need to think about those characteristics of the people themselves who will engage in the training, which are the trainees or the learners, the characteristics of the organization, which can include the resources that are available within the organization, and we need to think about how the training is delivered. In other words, what types of methods are used. The next phase or stage is to choose and administer an appropriate training method or multiple methods, with the goal, again, of helping people to learn those job-related knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics, competencies, or other types of behaviors. Now, sample types of training methods include things like simulations. They include lectures, and increasingly today we see video lectures and video-based and computer-based training becoming more popular, as it allows you to communicate more broadly and to do so asynchronously without having to fly a trainer to each site location for an organization. Now, the final phase or stage of this training process is to actually evaluate the training program's effectiveness. Now, this is something that is incredibly important because, after all, we want to know whether or not the training actually met its objectives. Did it influence or affect those things that we intended to affect? In other words, did it improve those knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics, competencies, and/or behaviors that we designed the training program to influence and to change and to build? So to wrap up, here are some of the references of the sources that I used for today's lecture. And here is crediting that image that I used earlier on the slide with the training definition that I proposed. So this wraps up the lecture for an introduction to training.